Oh, hey there. Thanks very much for checking out my videos. I do appreciate it. Uh, hey there. Thanks for checking out my videos. I do appreciate it. Don't know if we got a little loop there going on. So it's the beginning of March. So we're going to go over last month's little run through. So I'm a host on Turo. I'm coming up to 7 months. So kind of gives you a little idea there. Very new. The idea is that I'm in the Canadian market. Not a lot of information out there for Canadians in reference to Turo. So I thought I would share my experience and go from there. So pretty straightforward. I've got one vehicle on Turo right now. It's a 2014 Outlander by Mitsubishi. It's a GT model. Very nice unit. I like it a lot. It's got about 150,000 kilometers on it. It's in nice shape. It's got some little dings, some marks, so it's not a vehicle that I'm in love with. So it's not like a classic car or a showroom item. It's a daily driver, right? So that's why I thought I'd go out and get it, put it onto Turo. Then I get something in the winter that's all-wheel drive to be able to use. So that's the concept. I had a PT Cruiser at the time that I needed to replace anyways. So that's kind of the thought on that regards. So it came up to a 6-month point, which is with Turo, you need to do a inspection. So at the time, because it was minus 20 outside and we have snow and wonderful winter weather, I thought, well, I'll pull it off Turo. I didn't have to pull it off. Turo pulled it off for me, which is nice. I don't have to go in and change anything. And hold off on doing the inspection till basically March. We basically run it for 3 weeks without having any concerns or any issues to go with, right? Plus, I figured it would fill in the gap, and I wasn't getting too busy from that standpoint this time of year. So I thought, well, we'll pull it, and then maybe I'll decide to change over the snow tires with the inspection. Because of the current weather conditions, and I don't think we're going to be getting out of winter too soon, I left the snow tires on. So I paid to have a inspection done at the local garage. So this is the listing. Let's see if you can see it there, of what Turo basically requires. So it's not really a complicated list at all to kind of go through. It's pretty straightforward. The dilemma is that it's about, for most shops, they usually charge an hour. And in today's market, an hour is between $100 and $140. So it's one of those things you look at, you kind of go without no real work being completed. Not really what you kind of go worth that $100. So I decided to get an oil change with it. And with getting an oil change, I sat down with the service advisor and said, look, the oil change comes with an inspection anyways. These are the points that I need completed or checked over for Turo. I don't want to pay the additional hour because not that I'm cheap. It's just I need to be able to justify some of that work. So we went ahead and did an oil change. So the oil change was about $100. So we're looking at a synthetic oil change. Then we got some taxes on it, and so forth. So it's pretty reasonable. Now, because I have to do a brake inspection on the Turo inspection, I paid the $39 to have the wheels changed over, but without changing over the tires, right? So in other words, I could have taken in the all seasons and had them mounted at the same time. But because it's March and we still have snow on the ground and it's probably going to be a winter for a little while, I didn't want to switch them just yet. So that kind of gives you a little item there. So it means that I'll probably go out with my little jack and my little tool kit and probably change the tires out myself in probably 4 weeks. So again, they got to get paid to do their work, right? So that's the nature of it. So with the oil change and that little additional take the tires off and check the brakes, we're at $150 essentially to do it, right? So, and that for all intents and purposes is, other than tie rods and ball joints, which they're pretty easy to tell if they're bad, it's essentially a safety check. So it's nothing too difficult from that standpoint. So if you're running a vehicle on Turo and you're worried about this inspection, I wouldn't let it be a big concern for you because it's not really a comprehensive inspection. It's more of a visual check. So that 6-month inspection, it's going to cost you about $100. Try and roll it into another service. So if you go to a shop and you say, hey guys, I need to get this done, they're going to charge you out an hour and then say, well, look, let's do an oil change because you're doing the work anyways, and try and roll that into the price point. So that's my advice on that one. During the inspection, we did find a couple little things though. So we had an exhaust hanger that had worked itself loose. Now, unfortunately, there's a little rubber donut kind of at the top, and then you got a little hook, and the little hook gets welded to the actual exhaust system itself. In this situation, the little hook that's attached to the exhaust had broken off, which in the grand scheme of things, not a big deal. I kind of got an idea where it happened. So I did have the vehicle out on a Turo rental, and they did send it up north. So they went well past Owen Sound. And I'm almost certain, just based on some of I've had the vehicle oiled, and there's some little marks where the vehicle was oiled, and it's been kind of cleared off. So I think they've scraped a couple things, like, I don't think like brush or anything like that line. I think they actually hit probably, we've got these big boulders of ice that fall off vehicles' wheel wells. I think at one point the guy hit one of those, which is no fault of his own. Like, that's going to happen, right? And being an SUV, it does sit up a little taller, so it takes a little more of a hit to actually cause anything. But the exhaust on the Outlander, just the way it kind of angles a little bit, if you hit it just right, you're going to hit that little end of it. And I think that's what happened. Again, no big deal. So we had that fixed. Now, this is the dilemma. So I could either replace that section of pipe, which is an OEM, or a proprietary piece, which means that we're looking at probably $400 to $600 worth of parts, and then 4 bolts to unbolt it and bolt it back up. So not a lot of labor. So it's pretty straightforward from that standpoint. However, to save a little bit of money, the option is presented to basically repair that piece. So if you're going to a local shop that does exhaust repair, which I would recommend in this situation, they cut a little section out of the exhaust pipe, and they weld the hanger onto a clean piece of pipe. In other words, you don't want to be welding onto a rusty piece because it's going to fall off again, right? So they make a little 6-inch or a 9-inch piece of pipe, and the pipe goes over the old pipe, so it kind of like in and over, so easy. And then they tack weld all the way around. So it's a nice solid repair. It'll probably outlast the actual exhaust system. So it's pretty good from that standpoint. But when you're looking at parts and labor, you're looking at about $130 or $150 to fix that, which I know, drop in the bucket type deal. It's something you could probably do in the driveway if you were handy. But it's one of those things where when you're looking at February and you're at minus 10 or 15 outside and you got snow in the driveway, you don't really want to get underneath that vehicle and start putzing around with stuff like that. So this is a nice, easy fix. So that got that out of the way. So all in, to get the inspection done and ready, we're looking at about $325 Canadian with the taxes, with some repair work attached, right? So I haven't put it back up on Turo yet. I'm probably going to do that on Monday. It's just one of those things where I'm going to run it through the weekend, so why bother, right? So I'll relist, and by relisting, all I'm going to do is I'm going to send that inspection off to Turo, say that it's ready to go. I do need to give it a quick little clean up again if it goes out, so pretty minor from that standpoint. But again, completed. So that's kind of nice. So that's the update on that one. So what else have I been up to? Well, because I basically took February off of Turo, essentially because of the inspection and the snow and the weather and so forth. And just had an argument about, do I do the inspection now, or do I do the inspection closer to spring, mid-March? And then I could switch the tires out at the same time. Decided to bite the bullet, just get her done. So again, when the weather is improved, I'll just change the tires over myself, which is what I normally do. Then when I pull the tires off, I also do the brake service. So it's a simple thing. I pull all the little brake pins out, clean them, lubricate them. I make sure all the little rubber seals and grommets are good. And I basically go through the brake system, just tidy it up, clean off any rust and corrosion. There's a little backing plate on the front and on the rear on the discs. I like to pull that out and kind of just clean it up, give it a little spray, tidy it up, that type of deal. So if I ever have to service the brakes down the road, it's an easy job. Nothing gets seized. It's nice and tidy. And also, if it becomes an issue where I need to take it to a shop and have the repair work done, most guys can look at it and they can kind of appreciate it, that it's been serviced and maintained. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. So that kind of gives you a little run through on that one. So I've been out there looking around for another addition or replacement for the Outlander. So because I had the inspection coming up, I thought I'd list it on Kijiji. Kijiji is a free listing site here in Canada. I thought I'd put it out as far as a price point that I'm kind of into the vehicle for. And if I can find a buyer for it and I can rotate out of it, well, then I'll probably end up moving into another car. And then I'd have an opportunity to basically document loading a vehicle into Turo, starting fresh, and kind of reestablishing, that first Turo setup and kind of going, okay, let's give it another try, right? And I looked at an Outlander, no, not an Outlander, a Land Rover recently, and I thought the price was reasonable, but we couldn't come to an agreement. We're a little bit of a ways away. I felt the vehicle needed a little bit of, not necessarily required service today, but it was one of those things where rear end would need to be serviced. Couple little things related to timing I wanted to make sure was fine. And a few other little items that the seller just couldn't understand the idea that these are going to cost money in the next 3 months, probably a set of tires as well. So I needed to get a little discount off that. They were really close as far as pricing was concerned, as far as the retail advertising. I felt comfortable with that, but it was one of those things where I needed that little extra bit of money off just to offset some repair work that's probably coming up shortly. And the vehicle's still listed. I gave them an honest number. And I said, look, if you want to give me a call back, and it's a dealer, at the end of the month, or you feel like pulling the trigger and sending the vehicle off to an auction or discounting it to just get her gone, I'm probably the easiest guy to deal with because it's literally, here's the money. I'm going to take it to a shop. It's going to get the work done. You'll probably never hear from me again. That type of deal. So it's kind of nice from that standpoint. It sounds ridiculous, but if you are a car dealer, I think you can actually see value in that, where you kind of go, oh, there's a guy that's not going to call me in the next 3 or 4 days and complain about a chip or a nick or a scratch or, hey, things along that line. The vehicle's clearly disclosed. So again, it's one of those things where looking at the wholesale value and the retail value, it was in the middle there. So very reasonable from that standpoint. And then once we factor in just a couple things that just aren't part of the reconditioning, but I know are going to be relatively quickly going to need to get done, it was one of those things where it would be below the wholesale price, but marginally. Like one of those things that you look at, you kind of go, okay, I understand where he's coming from. He's got an overhead to cover, but at the same time, I've got to watch my interests too. So we passed on that, and I still have some stuff going on. So I went to an estate auction, and I picked up some surplus equipment for doing HVAC and some duct cleaning equipment and a few other little things that were very reasonably priced. I did that a month or so ago. I've been kind of rolling it in my head about the idea of doing a duct cleaning or doing an HVAC, an AC system service for residential or condominiums, a very small setup. So it's not the great big giant Hoover truck or anything along that line. It's literally a rolling system that can fit into the back of a van. So it's portable at an entry level from that standpoint. In the past, I've worked with HVAC and I've worked with duct cleaning, mostly on new homes. And I thought to myself, well, this is a good opportunity to kind of tap in on some experience I've had in the past and be able to bundle or put something together. So I've been trying to hit the government auctions, and I've been trying to get a surplus van or a government deal on something that's already got shelving and everything kind of all set and ready to go for service work. And I've almost pulled the trigger on a couple of them, but they had issues with history attached to them. It's one of those things where I'd like to get a vehicle that if I ran it for a year, and if I find that the first season or the first year of doing the duct cleaning or the tidying up works, great. If not, I can roll the vehicle into Turo, where I can take the equipment out, have like a little minivan, and be able to say, okay, I can offset some of the costs of the business or the startup, but putting the vehicle on Turo for a little while. And that's kind of the idea I was thinking about in the last couple of days, because I was looking at that Range Rover. I thought to myself, you know what, it's $120, $150 daily rental on that, which is great, potentially, but it may not have the high booking rate because of the costs attached to it. I thought, well, if I get into a nice little minivan, because I've been looking for a service vehicle, I could actually just kind of tailor that duct cleaning business, because it's not going to be very busy to start off with, and say, okay, well, I can put that minivan out for 2 weeks on Turo at a reasonable price, pay down the taxes, the service costs, things along that line initially before that business starts to roll. In other words, give myself 90 days. Or I could go ahead and say, okay, well, I can wait till the business to kind of slow down or kind of book it in schedule wise and make sure the equipment is out, so forth, and do it along that way. So it's been one of those thoughts. So I've been pricing out Dodge Caravans and minivans, which are not very exciting. And if you're looking at Turo, they don't really fetch a lot of money. And it kind of throws it into that kind of category of what can you get at a rental agency? Well, you can comfortably get a minivan at Hertz. So it's one of those things where I can't really compete in that category because they have some pretty sharp discounts there. So I personally may look at it and go, well, a 7-passenger minivan doesn't offer any real value if I can get it through a rental agency like Tilden or Hertz, right? So those things. But I'm looking at kind of a local thing and I'm going, well, not a lot of vans out here for that purpose. So maybe it might do okay. It's one of those things where if I gambled for 90 days, I'm going to use it for a small business anyways. If it works on Turo, I can keep it there. If it doesn't, I can just roll it into doing the business. So we might see an addition in the next little while of a little van. And strangely enough, I got thinking because I was looking at stuff on the internet there, and I thought, measurement-wise, I pulled the equipment out. It's about 36 inches tall. And if you drop the handle on the equipment for moving it's a vac system. If the opening is 40 inches on a hatchback, and if I've got a run of 52 inches or 48 inches, I can probably fit my equipment into a Mini Cooper, but maybe a Clubsman. Like that might be where I have to go. Or a regular Mini Cooper if I pull the back seat out. So if I take it out completely, I may have enough floor there to be able to put that little equipment, well, it's not little, be able to put that equipment in there if it's easy to get in and out. I might have to rig something to kind of make a ramp or something pretty easy out of aluminum that would just kind of set in place. So it's one of those things that I've been kind of working on. I talked to a guy online about a Mini Cooper. So I'm kind of going on that one. I'm thinking that'd be kind of cool. And to start off with, I don't need to have a lot of space because I'm only going to be offering one service, which should be like duct cleaning, right? So, and a couple tools and get an overhead box to put things in. So I've been thinking that because it's kind of a cool little vehicle, be nice graphicked up. And it's reasonably priced once you get to about 10 years old. And it's enough where I can say, okay, I can run that for a year. If it doesn't work, I can either throw it on Turo, and then I've got a little 2-door runabout, which again, Mini Cooper doesn't seem to fetch a lot of money, but it's not one of those things you'd find at a rental agency. So it's one of those things where I look and kind of go automatic 2-door with a nice little sunroof. I could run it for 6 months, seasonally doing my duct cleaning. When I'm done, detail the living daylights out of it, remove the cargo cover, the tray at the top, take the graphics off or the business name off of it, and put it on the Turo again and be able to run that for 6 months out of the year. So I've been thinking about that too. So if you're out there, what are your thoughts as far as dual use on that? Got a quote from my new insurance broker about liability insurance for that particular business and how that would affect that. So it's very reasonable if I get into something, a minivan or a nicely rated hatchback. In other words, nothing too sporty. Like I couldn't get into the S model or the supercharger, but I could get into a nice base car and probably be able to work that out pretty reasonably. So again, it's been on my to-do list to go take a look and do a little shopping. The dilemma is that odds are I'm not going to find a Mini Cooper this time of year because there's kind of seasonal to a degree. And the other one is that because they're not predominantly out in the government auction end of it, I'm probably not going to find one at a wholesale price. So it means I've got to be able to buy something at a retail price that essentially is complete. So in other words, I don't want to do any work with it. So the timing belt's got to have been done. Transmission has to have been serviced. And again, the retail price has to be in par or a little bit under, and it has to have decent tires. So I don't want to be able to throw money at it initially. Just want to be able to go turn the key and say, done. Issues are okay. It should run for a year without any problems, right? Again, if you're into an 8-year or a 10-year-old car, level of expectation there, you're going to put some work into it. But I think that's where I'm at. So that's kind of where I've been kind of debating things with Turo from that standpoint. I did change up my broker, so we talked about that in the last video. Again, insurance, ongoing issue with Turo. I think if you're a new person out there, I would probably review or sit down with your insurance broker initially and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And they may switch to be like, oh, don't do it. Which, to be honest with you, is probably good advice. So, but it's one of those things where if you do need to do this to offset, get a little income in, then maybe it's not a bad option for you. So far, my experience, but again, I'm not in a GTA. I'm not in a big center. I'm in kind of a little rural community. So far, my experience has been reasonably positive, although I wouldn't describe it as immensely profitable from that standpoint. But again, we'll review that once we get to that year end as far as what we total. Right now, it's covered the insurance cost for running it, so that's been taken care of. It's covered the repair work, so that's been completed, and a good portion of the initial HST, so the registration has pretty much been covered. So from that standpoint, I've got a vehicle that I bought 6 months or 8 months ago, where I haven't had to put out any money for insurance. I've offset the taxes. I've covered some of the repair bills attached to it, along with a set of tires. So again, I'm okay with that. Are we into profit? No, not really, because I had to buy the car, right? So it hasn't started paying off that. So we're 6 months or 7 months in. We've really just kind of paid off the administrative end of it. So then we're going to start rolling into paying off some of the actual car itself. And we'll see kind of what happens in the next 6 months. It's one of those things that you look at, you kind of go, does this make Turo profitable? You got to really work on the cost, right? So it's one of those things where you kind of sit back, you go, if you have the car existing and it's one that's in your family, you kind of go, okay, you're not really writing that off and saying, well, I'm not going to get any money for it. That's the same thing with this one here. So at that end of the year, I can look and kind of go, well, it's not going to be worth what I paid for it. But that 6 months, as far as Turo rental is concerned, is it going to buy down that depreciation? Like, is that going to get covered? I think it will. Is it going to leave me with a little bit of profit? I think it will, depending on how the rentals go. But is it going to be $1,000 or $2,000 and around that neck of the woods? Probably. When you talk to a lot of folks on Turo, they kind of say, hey, you're going to make oodles and oodles and oodles of cash. It's going to be worth your amount. No, it really isn't from that standpoint as far as where I'm at. If you're in the GTA or you're in a bigger service center, or maybe you're the lone guy in the middle of nowhere in a small town, you might do okay, like as far as that's concerned. But it's one of those things where I think you have to really move up either into a luxury vehicle for a higher daily rental and something that's out of that rental agency wheel. I'm not talking rare exotics. I'm talking like a 7-passenger Lincoln probably does okay. Probably doing okay if you picked up something that was a little bit on the utilitarian end of it, like a sport SUV, kind of like mine, but nothing that's over commercial, like something in the middle of the road, but yet with that ability to haul around 2 extra kids if you needed to, which is kind of where most of my clients have been. So it's just one of those things where it seems to have worked out okay from that standpoint. I did that little Chevy Cruze, which is, I wouldn't describe that as a compact car, but kind of a mid-size in our marketplace. It really didn't get a strong rental return, and it really didn't get much of in the way of response, which is why I rotated it out of it relatively quickly. I managed to get, close to what I paid for the car out of it, so that's pretty decent. Basically, it cost me a little bit of money in insurance, and it cost me a little bit of money in repair work, but not enough where it was kind of like, oh, okay, no, it wasn't anything huge, but it was enough to be able to say, okay, I can get rid of the car now, take that money and move it into something else, right? So again, a car that competes directly with a rental agency as far as what's available, probably not the wisest move on Turo. So again, unless of course you're in a market that can support it, try and find something that's kind of in the middle as far as what I've been experiencing from that standpoint. So that's about it. We're coming up to 25 minutes. I know I normally run these things around 30, and sometimes with the chit chat and chatter, I go a little bit over 30 typically. But that's where we're at. So again, not a lot to report because we've been kind of out of the system now for about 3 weeks. So no real rentals. But again, I would have been dealing with probably really slow traffic, or I would have gotten somebody in that was dealing with their car in the ditch or something along that line. So again, kind of bread and butter from that standpoint. So I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe. That would be great. A thumbs up is always nice too. I like to get some good responses from that standpoint. Again, if you've got any questions related to Turo, happy to look things up and kind of go from there. Again, it's just a starting point for me. I have started to get some real experience when it comes to dealing with insurance. If you have insurance questions, I can probably tell you a little bit about that from that standpoint. I've done a lot of research, and I've gone through a lot of hoops when it comes to my first initial broker, which was my broker of 10 years, to finding a new broker. So again, not the ideal situation for any such an imagination, but again, it's one of those things where just it is what it is from there. So far, no big accidents, no big collisions, no big to deal with as far as the insurance claims through Turo. I've had a couple little nicks and scratches and little minor things that I didn't bother to process through. Just fixed it in the driveway and went ahead, right? So in other words, I didn't want to tie the vehicle up over time. And I kind of work it in my head that there is what I call like a little lock pack attached to the vehicle. So if it's a few dollars of clips and a couple little pieces of material, I kind of just do the work, right, from that standpoint, which I can, which is nice. Okay, again, thank you very much for checking out the video. I do apologize for the horrible quality, but again, you are getting essentially, well, my new Apple computer should be helpful, but I haven't set up the Blue Yeti mic because the guys at Apple seem to have an issue with communication with them, but I'm working on that. So again, maybe next video we'll get some better audio content. Okay, thank you very much. Have a pleasant and enjoyable day. See ya.